It's a Monday morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's March the 25th, 2013. We are in the midst of March Madness. And we have madness in the studio this morning because my longtime buddy and longtime broadcast partner, Dave Barnick, is in with us to join us for the full half hour to talk about a bevy of issues. There's a million things to talk about with Dave. We'll get to that in just a second. But good morning, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Hope you're all psyched for Easter as it comes up this coming Sunday, obviously. And just a reminder that we will not be doing a Weber on Sports show next Monday, April Fool's Day, and there's no pun indicated by that, as this fool will be out of town. And our producer, director, and owner, also no pun indicated with him being a fool. He'll be out of town as well. So no Weber on Sports show next Monday, April the 1st. We will resume our broadcast on Monday, April the 8th. And we're happy to announce, and we'll remind you again at the end of the show, the fantastic, spectacular Waterloo Indian girls varsity basketball team that made it to Hudson Valley, getting crushed by Irvington. Looked like an NBA team to me when I watched that game. Michael Bree will be our special guest on April the 8th, the head coach of the Waterloo Indian girls varsity team. You talk about recognition. This young man and his assistants did a great job putting that team together. And as Michael will point out in the interview coming up in a couple of weeks, the Waterloo girls varsity coach, they're loaded for next year. They lose one player, Haley Wright. We'll talk about that with Dave in a few minutes. But it's good to be with you on a Monday morning. Hope you had a nice weekend. And it's great to bring in my longtime buddy, Dave Barnick, who, if you don't know, we started our relationship back in the 70s. Quick recap of how Dave became part of the broadcast media. I was starting to do football games, and we needed help to work some games because our schedule was increasing back in the early 70s under the guidance of George Sewin, or for that matter, it was Bud, his father at the time. We were looking for someone, and we sent out an SOS for people that may want to have interest in broadcasting sports on the radio back then, which, by the way, our studios was just down the street from where we are right now, WSFW. Dave applied with a few others, and I interviewed Dave. I listened to his voice. He's obviously from Ovid, a fine athlete in his own mark. David seemed to be the perfect candidate, and he was a big guy. And, of course, with all the people that did not like me, which still is the true point, I wanted somebody big that at least would be an intimidating factor when we went to bars and restaurants, pre- and post-game basketball broadcast, which, of course, we worked into more football games, then sectionals. And it's good to have my longtime buddy back in the 70s, Dave Barnick. Dave, good morning and welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Well, good morning, Harold. Good morning, Jim. Good to be with you this morning. I had to set 3 alarm clocks to make sure I was here on time. And, in fact, I beat you into the studio.
You did.
That bodes well. I thought maybe you were with Rich Hudson on your way in
Rich.
This morning.
Hey, Dave, let's start off by saying, make-believe, folks, that Dave's holding one of these. Make-believe this is your bracket, okay? And let's do our ceremonial first pitch here on the bracket. Okay, we can rip that baby up, throw it away, because, yes, I'm sure a lot of you have picked Syracuse to go all the way, and if you have, you're still in the hunt. But there's a lot of upsets that take place, and, of course, we're going to chew on some of those issues. First off, I must tell you that March Madness, David, has not disappointed us. As a basketball nut like you are and I am, you've watched a ton of games. It couldn't be any better than this. I mean, some of the old-time favorites are still around, the Syracuses, the Dukes, the Kansas. Miami of Florida, we'll talk about that. You and me go back a long time. I never remember them being a basketball powerhouse. They're loaded as well. Louisville, a lot of people are saying they're going to win this thing going away. Your thoughts so far in March Madness?
Well, I always listen to Mike and Mike in the morning, and I was thinking, of course, for the last week or so, what topics to discuss today. And what I was thinking about, Greenberg said better than I could. He said that he has never seen so many clunkers. The deterioration of play in the college game is phenomenal. But that being said, the excitement of so many games and the Cinderella stories, of course, everybody, including myself, Florida Gulf Coast, which I wouldn't mind visiting that campus because it's in Fort Myers, Florida.
Right.
But they have been phenomenal. Syracuse is where I had expected them to get.
Sure.
I hope I'm wrong because I had them. That's one of the few. The East, I got 4 out of 4 in the East bracket, but that's the only bracket that I had going for it. Only 10 out of 16 of the Sweet 16 I had Georgetown winning the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they got beat, of course, in the first round. I thought their defense would propel them to several wins, and yet that's what makes it so much fun, though, that you can literally, you can study, you can listen to the experts, and you're better off having your wife pick colors and mascots, and they'll do just as well.
My wife, Mary, who's never made out a NCAA bracket March Madness in her life, wants to do one next year, and we are going to have her make one out. She'll have just as good a chance as I have because, obviously, I've never made it that far. I've had a lot of losses in mine, thus I've ripped up mine. That signifies my H. Weber one is history. I've actually made out a couple of them. But let's talk about Florida Gulf Coast. I mean, a great story, a refreshing story. Dave, history being made. First 15 seed to make the Sweet 16 in the history of the NCAA March Madness. I had a chance to watch them against San Diego State. What a great, great game that was. I love Florida Gulf Coast. Who are they? Who cares? They run and gun. There's a guard on that team, Dave, and the name escapes me. I'm sure I'll think about it when I leave the show this morning. He runs up and down the court 100 miles an hour, both defensively and offensively, and he never breathes hard. I'd be at Geneva General getting checked in or about now if it was me. Just a great story, and, you just wonder. The odds makers, we'll get to that in a few minutes. The odds makers don't think they're going to get by Florida, which is a perennial top 10 team, of course, coached by Billy Donovan. The odds makers have them 11.5-point underdog, but, Dave, at this point, it don't mean anything. Mano a mano.
But Florida, I think, is one of those teams that's a perfect example of just how crude. I mean, they are physical.
Yep.
They are strong. They can run, but they throw up so many bricks.
Yeah, they do.
I'm like, are you kidding me? And they were on the ropes for a while yesterday after having a huge lead early. But that Florida Gulf Coast, that kid threw some alley-oops in both games.
Yeah, some great.
That looked like they were just throwing the ball out of bounds, and all of a sudden thundering down the lane for a slam dunk.
Amazing.
The guy's above the cylinder.
Just amazing. Well, certainly we're going to talk about the matchups. We'll give you times on the odds in a few seconds. But, Dave, you're wearing the orange colors. Jimmy, a graduate of Syracuse. I know you both have vested interest in the orange, and many of the people that check out this show obviously pulling for SU. My job at the Thruway, I see a lot of people wearing orange garb. They're psyched. SU Indiana harkens back 26 years ago, 1987. Smart from the baseline. Bang. SU loses heartbreaker. Now they resume their unbelievable matchup. And I watched Indiana against Shirley Temple, as I refer to Temple as on this show. I'll tell you right now, without Zeller, and Zeller's obviously an All-American. He was an All-American when he was 3, but this kid's a gamer. But in my mind, if Keita and Christmas and those big dudes from SU can sort of keep him under control, not let him score 35, give him his 20-23, I think SU has a legitimate shot of beating them on Thursday night.
Well, of course they have a shot.
Yep.
And kudos out to Keita.
Yeah.
Because he has come on like gangbusters.
How about his free throw shooting?
Exactly right. Because, as you were saying, Keith Smart may have hit the shot from the corner, bang.
Oh.
But one thing that hasn't changed for Syracuse in 26 years is Syracuse at the foul line, clunk. And I swore that Trish and Carter Williams had called up Ohio State and given them foul shooting instructions for a while yesterday, because Ohio State, because of their point guard, the very good Kraft. He was missing the front end of 1-and-1s, and they were lucky to get by. But Syracuse is streaky, and I'm happy for them because people forget that a year ago they had 3 players drafted in the NBA, and they only draft 2 rounds. They had 2 first-rounders and a third. That's the first time since, I think, about 1986 that Syracuse had 3 players drafted, and they lost a 4th very good player. And I'm sorry, Carter Williams has all that upside, but Scoop Jardine was far more consistent last year, and he had his trials and tribulations in 4 years at Syracuse.
And he also didn't visit Lloyd and Taylor either.
That's true.
He'll walk off with some stuff, which is still a mystery to me.
Well, Carter Williams, you may have heard, his house was on fire.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they
during the game.
During the game,
Really?
his parents home in Massachusetts near Boston.
Nice house, too. I don't know if that picture,
they had a wood stove and
Really?
pretty good flames going right through the roof there. So you like, and Trish, you like
Did
Trish.
a bathrobe get burnt in that stove from Lord and Taylor? I didn't know if that was part of the deal. We need to investigate that further. Maybe
I
get
don't
CSI. You're a CSI fan?
Yeah.
We'll do some
yeah,
investigation
yeah.
of that. Okay.
But I hope Trish, that team that lost in the finals to Kansas with John Wallace was a Cinderella story of sorts, and I hope Syracuse can emerge as these next two rounds as a Cinderella story. Of course, Syracuse, we were talking before, easy draw in one sense, but as they were saying also, the only top 4 seeded team to have to travel, and they had to travel cross country.
Sure.
And that is the same site, I think, from which they got to the Final Four when they lost to Kansas in the finals.
San Jose?
Well, it was the West Coast anyway, but.
Well, it'd be interesting to see.
Well, real quick, just talking about, how the overall talent level in college basketball is down and the overall play is a little rough. I think that plays to Syracuse's advantage because all year we follow Syracuse so closely and you see all their weaknesses and you're, heading down the stretch of the season, I'm like, this team has no chance to make a run in the tournament. But then you take a closer look at how everybody else in the country, I don't care if it's Kansas, number 1 seed, Gonzaga, number 1 seed that lost. Louisville's looks strong, but even Duke, even Indiana, these teams are not powerhouse teams having unbelievable seasons. They have issues of their own. And Indiana lost at Minnesota to close out the regular season, and they didn't look that great against the Temple team that we should have beat if we made our free throws back in December. So I hope that we can put together a couple more good games. I still don't think we have what it takes to win a national championship with the Syracuse team, but I really feel good about the matchup with Indiana, especially when they have to play against our zone. Now, Tom Crean has seen that zone before when he used to coach Marquette, but seeing it and telling your players about it is something different than actually having to face that defense for the first time.
Well, I think your comments are great. I think Syracuse is a microcosm of what's happened in college basketball. The fact that we spend so much time in this area, which is a tribute to Boeheim in Syracuse, paying attention to Syracuse, and that their rough play, their lack of scoring is indicative of not just them, but in the entire college game in most parts.
It's going to be interesting. I think Syracuse has got a legitimate shot. I think if Fair and Trish can get it going outside, I think obviously get some contribution from Sutherland, who's on again. But you mentioned Keita. He's an amazing story. I watched him, and going in, he had a 48% free throw percentage, and all of a sudden he made 6 in a row in one of those games that they built.
Over two games,
it was
he
amazing.
made 7 or 8.
It was amazing. I mean, swish.
His form is good, too.
Yeah. I mean, it was just amazing, and that was one of the reasons they advanced. By the way, let's go down through the docket for you folks. I want to check your Dave to give us a quick opinion on these games. This is Weber on Sports on a Monday. Hope you're enjoying our show. Dave Barnick, my longtime pal and associate, are in the studio. Dave, of course, working now with FingerLakes1.com Sports. You'll be probably getting Dave quite a bit in another couple months as you'll be doing some baseball out at Coburn Park as the Omen Theater folks will be back in town, Bob and Leslie. And as I speak of the Omens, let me give a shot at Danica Patrick. Yes, she was a top 10 at Daytona, but since then, let me give you the numbers, 38, 39, 36, and 31. Who's keeping track of these finishes? Maybe she does belong at the Connie's Diner as a waitress on her off shift. Just kidding. I had to take a shot.
Did you say top 10 or did you say 10?
Top.
She's still a 10.
Well, she's a 10. But beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
True.
It's true. All right, David. Thursday night, 7:15, CBS, Marquette, Miami. Miami a 5.5-point favorite. Give me your quick capsule.
I'm glad Miami survived yesterday. They're really a story you can love, and even though they're a 2 seed that could have been a 1 seed, I think they've emerged. Nobody expected them to do what they've done this year. The coach, of course, Laganegro, am I saying that?
Larinaga, Jim Larinaga.
If you saw that little skit of his in the post-game Muhammad Ali dance that he did last night, can you name one of the all-time great players of the NBA who performed at the University of Miami, who's in the NBA Hall of Fame?
An all-time great or Hall of Famer?
I give.
Wore jersey number 4, Rick Barry.
Rick Barry. Outstanding player. Well, as I approach my 68th birthday in another month, I have to tell you, I can't recall many years where Miami basketball was my centerpiece of thinking they had a basketball program. We all remember back in the football days, they had outstanding football programs at Miami year in and year out, for the most part.
Right.
Never thought of them as a basketball school. So it's kind of nice to see them playing good basketball. They're a 5.5-point favorite. That will be on CBS, folks. If you're checking out your DVRs, you're going to be out of the house. You want to check that game out. 7:15 tip-off time.
Now, we talked about, again, teams playing bad. I thought that the best game of the tournament was Marquette and Butler. Mm-hmm. The way they both came at each other and were making shots and playing great defense. And, to be honest with you, that would be who Syracuse would face next if they beat Indiana. I'm more scared about playing a Miami-Marquette winner than I am actually Indiana. I don't know why. I just feel comfortable with Indiana. But
I like their coach, Buzz Williams, too.
Yeah.
I just like his energy and his raw honesty and what he brings to the game.
And by the way, on TBS at 7:47, don't ask where to get these start times from. Sounds like a jet heading to Miami. 7:47 TBS. Arizona versus Ohio State. Ohio State, David, a 4-point favorite.
Well, I think that was one of the best games I've watched, was the Ohio State, Iowa State game yesterday. Iowa State, I think that was one of the toughest losses in the whole tournament. A couple of questionable calls. But, of course, you have to favor Ohio State. I'm not a fan of the Buckeyes, but I would expect them to advance.
And if you win that game as Ohio State or Arizona, who was a top 10 team for much of the year, you're going to advance to play a Wichita State LaSalle winner in the Elite Eight. So it's almost like, not to take anything away from either of those teams who have earned their way that far, but I'm looking at that Arizona-Ohio State game as the Elite Eight game,
Could be.
And then they advance and maybe handle a lesser Wichita State or LaSalle team to go to the Final Four.
And, of course, Sean Miller,
former Pitt guard.
That Jamie Dixon must have pictures of the University of Pittsburgh president or something in his back pocket to get a 10-year contract extension. Not that I dislike him, but every year in the tournament, it seems it's the same story with those guys.
See ya.
Exactly.
I think Dixon lines up his job as a commentator on CBS before the tournament even starts because he's always there.
He carries the extra suit.
Yep.
All right, that's the 7:47 start. Arizona, Ohio State, TBS. Following the Miami Marquette game on CBS at about 9:45, I'm going to say it's Syracuse, Indiana. Indiana, according to Las Vegas, 5.5-point favorite. Too many points, looks like. I would venture to say if I was in Vegas and wanted to drop a couple of dimes, I might take the orange into 5.5.
Well, as we know, those of us that stayed up for that entire Cal game,
right?
Syracuse can have the big lead.
Yes.
But we expect to be shocked if they don't allow a run to occur. Or a good capsule of their season was that Louisville final in the
it's amazing.
In the Big East tournament.
Up by 14, lose by 17. Amazing. Sutherland went to the bench, and it just like a new era hit.
I think Sutherland, everybody knows what a great shooter he is.
Yep.
But I think he's missed almost as much defensively as he is offensively when he's not in there. He knows where to play. He's awfully long. He fouled out, by the way, last year in the game they lost at Ohio State, which was critical down the stretch.
I agree with you about Sutherland because I was laying on the bed in the pits. I call it the sports room that I watch all my sports. Mary's on the other room watching QVC. And Louisville looked like so dismantled. SU was having their way with the Cardinals. I dozed off, woke up the next morning, thank God I had taped the game, and replayed it, and I could not believe the turnabout in fair play. From 14 up to 17 losing, I thought, my God, what happened? It was just like Rome had just crumbled. It was just like, I've never seen anything quite like that, where a team just totally reversed the fortunes that we're looking at.
But Boeheim, and the interviews I saw of his players, Harold, came out of that tournament overall, despite that bad saying, and I believed them, that they were confident moving forward. So I hope that's true and that translates into a great performance Thursday night.
Dave Barnick's our special guest for the full show. Let's run down the last game on Thursday night, then we'll take our commercial break. Of course, this is on TBS. That'll follow the Arizona-Ohio State game. A couple of teams that have a lot of people, no doubt, interested. LaSalle versus Wichita State. Wichita State, a 3-point favorite.
Man, that's a toss-up.
Toss-up.
I can't name – the only player I can name from LaSalle is Tim Legler, who's the ESPN analyst. And he actually said he had them going to the Sweet 16. So the Shockers, though, you got to like –
I do like
the
them.
Shockers as a name.
Yeah,
Wichita State Shockers.
Yeah, it's like Florida Gulf Coast. I thought that was an appetizer to the meals.
Yeah, that's
before I saw them play basketball. This is Weber on Sports on a Monday, March 25th, 2013. Hope you're enjoying our chit-chat with Dave Barnick. We're going to go through and talk about Friday's games, and then we'll talk about a couple other quick topics here on a Weber on Sports show on a Monday morning. We'll take a break, hear from the great sponsors that make this show possible. We'll be right back. That's right. Welcome back, everybody. It's the Dog with you, H. Weber, with another edition of Weber on Sports. Hey, the temperatures are supposed to climb right up the scale in mid-40s by the end of the week, Dave. That's a lot better than the 20s we've been seeing.
Yeah, it's better. It'll save me a few dollars on the heating costs, but still not quite as warm as I'd like it to be slugging a little white ball.
Well, I know. We had the new head pro, Chris Maneri, on there last week on this show. We want to thank Chris for coming on. And I, like many others, I'm sure Jim and a lot of other people that play out of Seneca Falls are looking forward to going down there and hitting that ball, because they officially open, the course officially opens April 1st, which is next Monday, ironically. So it'll be interesting. Maybe the temperatures will climb to 48. By the way, let's run down the Sweet 16 Friday matchups, and we're going to cover a couple other topics before we wrap this baby up this morning. On Friday night at 7:15, the first game on CBS will pit Oregon versus Louisville. David, the prohibitive favorite, and the odds makers in Vegas think so. They have Louisville a 9.5-point favorite against Oregon.
I think that's a lot of points.
It is.
The consensus is Oregon was seeded way too low or way too high. However you look at that thing. They were a 12 seed, probably should have been more like a 5 seed. And they can run, they can fill it up. And, of course, no secret here, I'm not a Louisville fan.
Right.
But Louisville is playing really well. And when their guards are on as they have been,
they're tough.
They wear you down. And I think Pitino has bought into the way so many the way the officiating is allowing the thuggery to occur, and he just has them chest bumps, hammer them, and they call every third or fourth hammer.
Right,
but that's okay.
It's okay. And by the way, you look at the Louisville tradition in the NCAA. If you go back to the last 5 or 6 years, you'll be amazed. Not amazed. The stats will prove me correct. They were eliminated in the first, second round. A lot of those years they were gone. And they came in with pretty good credentials. Well, Louisville under Pitino has had the habit of getting exited early. So it's kind of ironic now they're at the Sweet 16. This may be their year, just maybe.
One of the best lines I heard is that if Indiana plays Louisville in the finals, all the University of Kentucky fans are going to jump off bridges.
That's a good one. That'll be the CBS game, Oregon against Louisville, 7:15 on Friday night. Check your DVR if you're not going to be home for that game if you have interest. And at 7:37 on TBS, ironically, Jim talked about it. Jim Sinicropi talked about Kansas, up and down Kansas, down by 12 to Carolina, ends up winning by 15 or 16. Turnabout play in that game. Kansas against Michigan, good matchup. They've known each other for many years. Kansas a 2.5-point favorite.
Well, I'm glad that Beeline has Michigan playing well, because he's a nice story too. Of course, his roots in Division I occurring in New York State. I think he was at Canisius and Lemoyne. And I have recognized that I have no idea who's going to win any of these games.
Right.
Thus, since I think Kansas isn't as good as the record is,
right,
they'll probably go all the way. But Michigan is on a roll right now, so I would not be surprised at all if Michigan nipped.
Well, amazing thing to me is that Michigan hasn't been to the Sweet 16, not the Final Four, not the championship game, not the Elite Eight, but the Sweet 16 since 1994. Michigan.
That's hard to believe.
It is, because back in those days they were pretty dominant. You know, the Fab Five, and then even before that they had some great players, Glenn Rice and
so. They haven't
Terry
been to
Mills.
the Sweet 16. But if they somehow get to the NCAA finals, but were to lose to Ohio State, then Beeline gets fired, right?
Well, you know, the other interesting thing about these brackets that everybody's talking about how strong the Big Ten is this year. They're the best conference, and I agree. But the Big Ten is poised to potentially have 4 Final Four teams, which would be unbelievable. It's always been my dream as a Big East fan to pick in 4 Big East teams. Well, that's not going to happen this year or ever because Big East is going away. But if you look at your brackets, you got Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana, and then who's the one up top? Michigan State, all in separate brackets. You know, all 2 games away from the Final Four.
Not everybody thinks the Big Ten is that good.
Yeah.
Charles Barkley's been saying they're overrated.
No, he thinks the Pac-10's good.
But he did say they have 4 quality teams. He just said the rest of the league is so-so.
Yeah.
Other games, by the way, the game following the CBS broadcast at 7:15 between Louisville and Oregon at about 9:45, around there. CBS will show you a great matchup. Duke versus Michigan State. Couple of old arch rivals. They love to battle each other. 1.5-point favorite Duke. I think that line is in line.
That's
a toss-up.
It really is. I think Duke were the darlings of the college season earlier in the season.
Right.
And then their kind of stock went down a little bit.
Todd Kelly got injured. He's their best, their senior big man. And when he was out, they were a little less. Then he comes back. But I think there's something wrong with Duke. They lose to Maryland in the semifinals of their conference tournament. Maryland, not that great.
No.
And then they won the first 2 games, Creighton last night, and then their opening round game.
Not impressively, though.
Yeah, they struggled a bit.
Albany.
Against Albany.
The Danes.
And so something's kind of off there. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm going with Michigan State +8 in that game. Michigan State's going to win that game
not
by 8.
+8.
Yeah, they're going to win by 8 or 10 points.
Well, Tom Izzo gets great kudos, but of course Krzyzewski and that'll be I would guess the highest rated game nationally.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then the final game of the Sweet 16 will be played around 9:45. That'll be on TBS. This game I probably won't be up because I never stay up that late anyways because I'm old. Florida Gulf. I love it. Florida Gulf versus Florida. I mean, you don't get any better than a Cinderella story. 11.5-point favored by Florida. And again, if I was in Vegas where it was legal to bet, Dave, I'm sure I'd throw a $10, $20 bill on Florida Gulf just for the 11.5 points and just watch them play.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
We'll all be rooting for them. And I think, again, Florida, like Louisville, plays such a physical brand of basketball, even though they throw up a lot of bricks. A lot of these teams, they remind me of these good athlete-type football players or wrestlers that I remember. They could run, they could rebound, but they just hammer the heck out of you, and a lot of that goes by the wayside. So the run probably ends, but I'll be squeezing for the Fort Myers team.
Oh, I love it.
And the thing is, I don't know. San Diego State was a pretty good team.
Yeah.
The athletic, real, true Division I roster. And with Florida Gulf Coast beat them easily.
Yeah.
We know what Georgetown is.
Yeah.
Florida Gulf Coast beat them easily. And now they get to play Florida. Isn't it ironic that they play Florida? When you're recruiting for Florida Gulf Coast, Florida gets theirs, Florida State gets theirs, Miami gets theirs, South Florida gets theirs, maybe Central Florida. And then, the rest of the
crumbs.
Comes to Florida Gulf Coast or Jacksonville or, or Savannah State or those types. So I think it's kind of ironic that they get to play Florida now, which, it would be a gigantic win for their program.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, one thing we know from yesterday, Florida were thumped on Minnesota early.
And gave it back.
And we know how quickly Florida Gulf Coast can fill it up. I was shocked.
I love it.
At how Georgetown panicked and threw up all those 3 balls against them in the early second half the other night. So
All right, we're spending a lot of time. We're getting ready to wrap this baby up. We'll spend a few more minutes. A couple of quick capsule comments from Dave on a few topics that I just wrote down here. Dave, Miami Heat NBA. I'm not an NBA fan. Got to give kudos. 26 straight wins by Miami Heat. I know you're a longtime Boston Celtic fan. They look like they are the cream of the crop.
No doubt. And actually, I think the NBA has risen in prominence because of the deterioration of the skill level of the college game. Because really, the NBA could now be called the INBA, the International Basketball Association. Players, even from the U.S., spend a lot of time in Europe or all countries all over the world.
Right.
When the draft occurs, you're going to see half the players drafted internationally. I mean, Carter Williams, they're talking about, I think slated in a recent article I read, as the number 10 draft pick in this upcoming draft.
It's amazing.
Because they draft not on performance but on potential these days.
Right.
So Miami definitely the team to beat. LeBron, I sadly admit, as good as he is, I'm also finding him a bit more likable as time goes on. That doesn't mean, as a diehard Celtic fan, I won't be rooting for some groin pulls by Wade or LeBron. And by the way, Chris Bosh, I don't know if you know this story. Chris Bosh told the University of Miami basketball coach, he scrimmaged with him and said, your players don't work hard enough. This was in the offseason. And the coach asked if he'd be willing to tell him that. He did, and that's translated into a different work ethic in part.
I'm sure I know what your comment on this one. A lot of speculation, a lot of discussion. Jim and you both can chime in. LeBron James versus Michael Jordan. Some purists are saying LeBron is a better athlete. You have to go a long time to make that determination. Michael did it for years. LeBron, physically stronger, taller, quicker maybe. I don't think you can argue that LeBron is a better all-around NBA player than Michael Jordan because Michael did it for a long time. Your point on Michael Jordan versus LeBron, some people are discussing who's the best.
Well,
you can't say that.
What gets me as somebody who's not in their 20s or 30s or 40s is that all the names of players don't even get mentioned now.
Exactly.
One thing I will say for LeBron, I don't think he's as petty as Michael Jordan is proving to be, because anytime Michael Jordan hears anything that could be viewed as perhaps LeBron could challenge his supremacy as the greatest of all time, he gets very prickly. He attacks them back. You know, I think you have to wait.
You got to wait.
You don't even. You know, you could ask people who's Bill Russell. They don't even know who he is. Anyway?
But I'll tell you,
LeBron is big. Is if you just put them side by side, you say, "Gee, LeBron's better. He's bigger. He's stronger. He's faster." But you know, I think it all comes down to that LeBron needs to win 4 or 5 more titles before he can be in that conversation.
I just finished reading The Dream Team, and Krzyzewski's quoted is in there talking about Magic Johnson, and really it's a nice tribute to Larry Bird in that book too. But they said the difference between Jordan and Magic Johnson was that Magic Johnson could feel bad for you, and Jordan doesn't have the capacity to feel bad for you. He has all these guys are ultra competitive. But then Jordan's one step above that. He just goes for the juggler 100% of the time. But LeBron is a phenomenal talent, and it's hard. I just say it's hard to compare great players in different eras.
Dave, you mentioned Danica Patrick, a 10 in your mind. If the Lord, we give credit to the Lord to create us, your body, my body, Jim's body, and the way we are, which of course we're probably a 1.5 on that scale. I am. Maybe you're maybe a 3. Jim might be a 4. But when they created LeBron James, I'm not sure they missed any particular 1% to get to that 100 percentile. I can't imagine how a human being could be created any more intimidating and awesome as a LeBron James. I mean, I don't see, and I don't know. This guy is, as Jim pointed out, he's not only big, but he's fast.
Well,
and he can do it.
He has
this guy's got
the agility.
Oh, my God.
The skill level. You know, we haven't even mentioned Kobe Bryant.
I understand. He's not even mentioned the same breath as LeBron.
And Kobe is he hits those fallaways from deep. He's just a phenomenal competitor as well.
All right, quick comment, and then we're going to get ready to wrap this baby up. NFL, I'm a little upset with the NFL. I watch it. I'm a big fan. It's the most popular sport in America and I guess around the world. To me, David, I want you and Jim to comment. To me, they're taking away the vicious factor of the NFL. Now we understand they've passed yet another rule that will prevent a running back to put his head down into the chest of a defensive. You played football. You were a hell of a football player for South Seneca. Now they're saying the running backs can't forge their head into the bodies of a defensive lineman or a defensive back. David, are we going to give out skirts starting in September and flags? Where is this sport going to? I'm sorry. I understand people get hurt in the NFL. And you played. I didn't. I was 112 pounds when I was in high school. My point, David, is to me, they're going out of their minds for this game. Where happened to the NFL rock'em sock'em, Dick Butkus type of football?
I think it's just reflective of what's happening
it's terrible.
Everywhere. Is a lot of attorneys will be involved.
It's so bad.
But I greatly look forward to even more delays and more commercials while they put plays under review.
They're
so calling it the Trent Richardson rule, and he's only played 1 year in the NFL.
It's embarrassing.
But I've also heard a lot of the experts like Peter King say, this is much ado about nothing. It's really not going to impact the game that much, and he doesn't think there's that much more they can do outside of perhaps the kicking game.
I don't know.
The kickoffs.
I'm more worried about the Buffalo Bills and how are they going to continue to let their fans down, and who are they going to draft this year?
I think it comes from two places. I think one is the possibility of the lawsuits the NFL might face, so they're just trying to protect themselves by putting these rules in place. And the other is when Barack Obama said if he had a son, he wouldn't let him play football. I think the NFL is in the sport of football in general is worried about that, about the decrease in youth play. And so I think it's a kind of a combination of both those things. And, it's interesting because in basketball, we've been seeing it in the NCAA tournament with the elbow rule. If your elbow contacts somebody, it's a flagrant. That is, and every announcer to a T says this rule is stupid. They got to do something about it. And I agree. I think that you can tell intent and inadvertent elbows. If you want to call, just a personal foul.
That's okay.
That's fine. But a flagrant two shots in the ball is just too much.
Fortunately, so many players can't even hit 50% of their free throws that it ends up not figuring into it. But it screws up the flow of the game and turns people off.
I guess my age factor, when I remember watching the NFL, was rock'em sock'em. Yes, there were injuries, and yes, people were being carried off. And I'm not saying this is the Roman Empire. But to me, you can't touch an offensive end except for 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. You got to leave them alone. You can't touch the quarterback, get near his ear or his leg because they're going to call 15 yards. I just think, to me, they have transformed any NFL into a sissy league, to my view, whereas I don't look forward to it. I still watch it, but they got so many rules. And I understand the lawyers and protecting people from getting hurt, but we're talking about the National Football League. You join that game, David. You are a college athlete, a high school athlete at your own peril. You get in the NFL. You're not drafted. I mean, you get drafted, literally, but you don't have to play. My point is, I'm not looking for bloodthirstiness on the field. I think it's gone crazy. Now this thing with the latest with the offensive running backs, I just think they're taking away I'm going to say it, the vicious factor of the NFL. To me,
tough to play defense.
That was part, David, of my attraction to watch NFL. It's a tough sport.
It'll slow the game down.
It's a tough sport.
Well. And but I think it is for the protection of the players, but it's more for the protection of the shield.
Yeah. All right, let's go to now as we get ready to wrap up the show. I want to get a comment and a prediction on who's going to win this NCAA. We talked about March Madness, David, and we'll get Jimmy's view. Okay, we're down to the Sweet 16. Give me your pick.
Well, it's not going to be the New York Yankees.
Okay, oh God, they're in trouble.
And one prediction I will make if Jeter plays in 120 games, even 100 at shortstop, that'll surprise me, and that's sad because he's my favorite player. Currently playing.
They have a shot at being last in that division.
No doubt.
They have a shot.
I think they'll be fighting with their rivals, the Red Sox, for last place.
They have a shot,
So that should allow Lucille Snyder and a lot of others to go to bed early this year.
Opening day in a week.
That's right.
Maybe I should pick Louisville just to jinx them, but I'm going to go with the University of Miami as a team that's easy to root for.
The Canes.
and we'll see if they can get to the finals and beat Louisville there.
SU grad Jim Sinicropi.
Oh, boy. I think it's wide open. I really do. If Louisville certainly is a good pick, but, you look back to that Big East final game.
Yep.
Syracuse was up by 16 points on them.
Right.
So how can I say that Louisville is a lock to win this thing when Syracuse, was up 16 points on these guys through, 25 minutes of the game. So I don't know exactly who to go for. Kansas doesn't look good to me.
Right.
Ohio State is kind of think Ohio State, but you know what? I think that one of the toughest outs is going to be Marquette. And I hope Syracuse beats Indiana and Marquette loses, because I don't want to play Marquette. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say if Syracuse doesn't do it, Marquette and Buzz Williams.
All right.
Wow.
All right, and the dog is going to say, drum roll, please. I'm going to go against Jimmy Whithouse is new on this show.
Florida Gulf Coast.
No, I'm taking the Jayhawks of Kansas. I don't know why, just got a feeling. I got a feeling.
Bill Self gets pretty upset.
I love it. I love his post.
He had that great post-game
I love
comment.
it. That was awesome, man. It was great.
And Roy Williams cried again. I don't know if you saw that. He always cries every year. Roy, you were a 9 seed. You had to expect that you were going to lose.
Go get some Kleenexes.
I think for in the last 5 years, 2 of those years, Syracuse legitimately could have won it all, if not for the
injuries and suspension.
Exactly. I would love, before Boeheim resigns or retires or whatever, I would love for him to get one more win.
They're due. It's 10-year cycle.
It's going to be interesting.
I don't see it happening this year. I hear they got a great blue chip recruiting class coming in next year.
They always do.
But let's root for the Orange.
That's right.
We're 4 games away, 2 games away from Atlanta, 1 game at a time. Anything can happen. We got as good a shot as anybody, honestly, with the parity.
Who did Brad pick?
Who did Brad pick? Last night we did the Upstate Orange podcast here at Finger Lakes 1, and it was just Brad and myself and our producer Jeremy. And we didn't actually make picks at this point.
Okay.
But I can tell you who Brad would pick
at
this point, and I would think it would be Louisville.
Indiana's the team we haven't mentioned that is probably the second most picked team of those 16 left behind Louisville, second most favorite.
But they're flawed, though. I'm telling you, anybody that's paid attention and watched them all year, they've been number one kind of wire to wire for them. They've number one early and number one at the end of the regular season, but they are flawed just like every other team. So
and like his brother-in-law, Jim Harbaugh, who among us wouldn't like to see Crean flame out and lose?
Yeah, and Crean, like I said earlier, he knows the Syracuse zone because he coached at Marquette. So that's another kind of ripple. He's played against this zone and coached against it before, but I don't think his players have. I don't think they're ready for it. I think we're going to beat Indiana.
By the way, if you are an NCAA fan, and a lot of you are checking out the show, if you have any reason to think the NCAA is ever going to lose their ratings to this March Madness, check it out this coming Thursday night, SU Indiana. Reason I'm bringing this point up, look at the crowd. It will be capacity, sold out, A, and B, a sea of orange and a sea of red.
On the Georgetown Hoyas home court.
Indiana, by the way, folks, travels amazingly well, and so does Syracuse. They're going to be just packed that joint because Indiana has an unbelievable traveling squad, and David, your words travel well too. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for David Barnick for joining us this morning to chop on a few topics. We had a few that we never got to, but he'll be back to talk to us down the road. Dave, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was fun once I got the cobwebs out this morning. And
check out
my
David.
Best to Mary.
That's right. Thank you. And check out David along with FingerLakes1.com Sports, because I'm sure the next endeavor that Jim will be going will be Newark Pilot Baseball. And, of course, David will be in the broadcast booth covering some of those games as well. And hopefully, if I don't work every night at the Thruway, I'll be out to help out Dave sometimes, too. By the way, don't forget, next week, April Fool's Day, a couple of fools, Jim Sinicropi and the dog, will not be here. We will not be doing a Weber on Sports show. But we'll be back on April 8th, God willing, and Michael Briggy, the head coach of the Waterloo Girls varsity team that made it all the way to Hudson Valley. an amazing run those girls had, and they are loaded for next year. So Michael Bree will be our special guest for the full show. And David, before we sign off, a quick comment about the Waterloo girls. I know you follow them. You obviously know their game, and they obviously had a sensational season.
Brought back memories to that heartbreaking loss of Sandy Mitchell and Kara Rogers and Jennifer Johnson and that group. And as you said, their coach, I'm sure, is somewhat disappointed, but after he took a little sigh of relief that the season is over, a little break, he's got to be thinking, just stay healthy, and I can't wait till next year.
Yeah, I know.
Because they got a lot coming back. That Laura Deming, super Lindsey Johnson.
Oh, phenomenal.
And Chelsea Steinrich really came on, didn't she?
Yep.
The only person that they lose is Haley Wright,
and she was a good player.
Good leader, good player. But, I think they're looking at a rematch with that team they lost Irvington in the finals next year, and I think they're going to be well equipped to take down that team next year.
Irvington, 4 straight state titles. They got some game. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we could talk here till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but we got to get wrapped up. Jim's got other programs to put on here. So don't forget, from David, myself, and Jimmy, we wish you all a very happy Easter coming up this Sunday. Hopefully the temperature will rise to the mid-40s. Take care, everybody. Again, we're not here next week. Our next show will be April the 8th when Michael Bree will be our special guest, and he'll be on the couch. Speaking for Dave Barnick and Jim Sinicropi, take care, everybody. That's a look at sports my way.